over here on the guitar and vocals. Give it up one time for Mr. Cliff Frederiksen.
Oh, let's see. I started playing the guitar when I was 11 years old, so that'd be 59 years ago. And actually, my first guitar was a Mickey Mouse guitar. My brother Bill got one for Christmas and hated it. And I picked the thing up and thought, this has some possibilities. So I got the book out and it showed me some rudimentary chords. My dad watched me from the other room. I didn't know he was watching me, but he went out and bought me a little L4 Gibson and a small amplifier with a DeArmond pickup. And that was the beginning of a misspent youth. My dad was a professional musician. He played accordion, piano, and organ, and was a staff CBS musician at KMOX in St. Louis. He also did a whole bunch of commercials. He was best known for the Busch Bavarian beer early commercials. He went up to Chicago, and they were auditioning accordionists for this, and all these guys were bringing in their $2,000 and $3,000 Excelsior and Panasonic accordions, and my dad had his along because he had one, but he also brought a little 12-bass student accordion. It was just awful. And he plugged that puppy in, and he said, "That's it! That's the sound we want," because it was this out-of-tune, miserable, sounded like he was coming from Bavaria in the Alps somewhere.
Busch Bavarian beer, like Bavaria, sunny and bright, it's friendly as a village fair. Busch Bavarian beer.
I knew I was going to do this for a living almost from the beginning. I really admired my dad, and I really enjoyed the guys he hung around with. The musicians they were really a colorful bunch of characters that left a lasting impression on me. So this is what I really wanted to do right away. And my grades in high school and college showed it too. Never quite pulled that together. But I spent a lot of time with the instruments. I practiced a lot and I listened to a lot. And I had some good mentoring. There were a couple of guitar players in St. Louis at the time. One was a guy named Joe Shermer, who was also a spectacular banjo player, the Dixieland variety. And another guitar player named Bob Hoyer, who was a symphony violinist, but in 1944 a lot of the guys were in the service, and he couldn't pass the physical to go, so he was kind of stuck with no symphony. So he bought a guitar, and shortly after that was the best guitar player in St. Louis, and stayed that way till he died at 80 years old. He was one of those guys that had a perfect pitch and huge hands, wonderful facility, and a great sense of taste. It's hard to beat a guy like that. It was just overwhelming to see a guy like that. He's kind of like Joe Pass on steroids. Just a wonderful player. And they kind of took me under their wing, and I got to watch. The best thing is I got to watch those guys play and see their hands move. You know, the young kids today got the internet, and they can see some of the best all the time. But when I was a kid, we're talking about, the early 50s. If we didn't see them play live or sit in a room with them, it wasn't going to happen. So grateful for the experience and the mentoring. That was an experience. Working with Tina, I only did 2 weeks with that bunch, and that was because Ike had trouble with his hand. He broke a knuckle, couldn't play guitar. And it was a fascinating experience because they were doing a bunch of clubs in St. Louis called teen clubs. Now they worked bars too, but they made a bunch of money playing like Velasco's Teen Club in Ferguson, I might add, Missouri. And they would, they charged $10 to get in, and the place would have like 300 people in it. And the band was really, really tight. And they were all all black musicians in their mid-30s to 50s. Good horn section, usually two horns. And a unique experience was watching what they wore. All of the guys had tan sport coats, baggy pants, and usually egg stains someplace on the sport coats. It was almost a prerequisite to be stained with some sort of food. And they played just wonderfully. The only sad thing was working with Ike, he was mean. And he had, I don't know how to describe it, dead black eyes. You look in the guy's eyes and they were just flat. And it was scary. And then I finally figured out what it was. He was just mean. I mean, at the end of my last gig, at that end of 2 weeks, when his hand getting better enough to play, Tina said something wrong and he smacked her. Like knocked her from the front of the club into the back of the Cadillac. They had a Fleetwood that they were driving along with. And I'd never seen anybody hit a woman before. It just, it was like, what? And the entire band sort of, oh, yeah, say, scared me. I was dead. And the musical experience was good. Actually, I played pretty good piano. And when his hand was hurt, his left hand was hurt, so he would play one of the pianos. This particular teen club had a horrible upright piano, but it was relatively in tune. So he would play some piano parts behind what was going on, and I would wail away on guitar doing what he wanted me to do. Very strange environment. But the musicians, very, very good. Tina was interesting. I think she was afraid of Ike and never said much. She all kinds of personality on stage, but when she got off, she shut down. And I understand that now, but at the time I thought it was just strange. When you see that kind of vibrant personality on a stage and then sort of a wallflower off, it was like very different.